Oh, let me see if I can. Evening class.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening.
Hi, I'm not even able to see the class itself, but how many members of how many persons are in the group just now?
It's a bit low.
Are you here? Oh, okay. Let me see if I can get a little bit more vocal. Greetings and salutations to everybody. Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
All right. Now listen, I don't have the advantage of seeing anybody back there, you know, so you're gonna have to use your voice with me. I don't know if Sebastian can make it possible for me to read the class. Is that possible? And I know some.
See what I can do.
Okay.
But the camera here is in trouble. Also, classes online.
Oh, online. All right. I seen some soup drinking or tea drinking. That was life for me some time ago, way back in Oyo, when I was in that class. I mean, what it is like. So we're in the month of October. That means you are in the middle of the semester. Mid-semester should be coming up. But let me just greet you officially. I'm Carlissa Pearson, and I'm your guest lecturer for tonight. I've had this class for a number of years, community participation in health. I'm hoping that at the end of the session, you know, we'll meet some of the objectives that will be laid out a little from now. I currently reside overseas in the US at a special time, so I don't know what that means. But we will talk about some of the factors that, you know, the changing factors, the superpower and how it impacts community health, and I will try to sensitively address that. But some of those, I'll go through the objectives down in the presentation, but I just want to just ask each person present maybe a quick introduction. It's a 2-hour long presentation, and I'm a long meter. This presentation usually takes the form of a very didactic. I'm usually talking, and I do the talking. But there is a point in the session where we will have breakout groups, and you will get a chance to share a little bit more. Class like this is sometimes better done in person, you know, but we do what we have to do, work with how we're going to work with things. And so let me just quickly ask each person present, how many of you are in the room just now? The classroom itself. Physical classroom.
Six.
8? 8 persons? All right, so just a quick show of face and to say, listen, my name is X and Y, and this is my profession, and this is where I work. Something to that effect. Very quickly, so I could get into the class. Hey, I see you.
Hi, I'm Simone Doctor.
Simone Doctor. People, for some reason, Simone Doctor. I don't know, Simone, Simone, are you a medical practitioner?
No, I'm not. I'm a
No.
public health inspector.
Okay, you never go Queens High School, no?
No.
Okay, all right, so welcome, Simone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the other person to the other side of the room. I never liked that side of the room, you know, my side was right up front in the corner. But go ahead.
Denise Wood.
Pardon me?
Denise Wood.
Denise Wood, and
Denise Wood.
yeah, and your profession? Wood.
Nurse.
Okay,
Nursing.
registered nurse, public health nurse,
Nurse practitioner.
nurse practitioner. All right, welcome to this class. Welcome, welcome. I should ask both of you parishes that you serve in, or where are you? Which region?
Oh, Sarah. I'm Sarah.
You're Sarah?
Sarah. Oh, Sarah.
Sarah,
Both of
okay.
us.
All right, awesome, awesome. The person that I can barely see in the corner on the left here.
Yeah.
Yes, Elena. I'm Karen Palmer-Cole. I'm a doctor from Victoria Jubilee Hospital.
Which one? Hospital?
Victoria Jubilee Hospital.
Victoria Jubilee Hospital, Specialist Hospital. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
I'm Petra Williams Reno, Minister of Health, PR and Communications.
Okay, nice. Woo! That was my own ministry, you know. As I will tell you something. I asked Sebastian on the phone. I saw you up front a little earlier, and I was saying, I could never Dr. Nevins, that the person, my eyes back still, you know, but, and they're like, Dr. Nevins, getting younger man. But then, welcome, welcome, welcome. Nice to see somebody.
Thank you.
The person that just came here, my eyes are not so good after the 40 and the 50.
Introduce yourself to your name.
Matisha Archer, doctor at Victoria Jubilee Hospital.
Wow, Victoria Jubilee, enough in the place here, man. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Vanessa Green, doctor working in primary care at St. Thomas Health Department.
All right, St. Thomas Health Department. I don't even know from back then. I've been away for so long that I can't even, sometimes I'm just babbling with the names. You know, when you get over the 40s and the 50s and you're not sure about that thing. But is there anybody else that hasn't come forward?
No, that's it.
All right. So I'm gonna quickly try to, if there's nobody else, and anybody else online, Sharon Smith. I'm not sure if she's part of this group to, or just, you know. All right, so I'm gonna go into the presentation, and let me see. Okay, so tonight's class comes under your I'm looking at community participation health. And of course, the topic is so central to the MPH program, it's central to everything public health, it's central to global health, it's central to, I mean, our goals and objectives. But let's just talk quickly about what will guide some of what I will share here. I'm hoping that at the end of this presentation, we will have a community participation. We will look at the definition of community participation. We'll look at some of the reasons and rationale for community participation, some of the approaches to community participation. We will give some efforts and attentions to a paradigm shift as it relates to community participation. And certainly we're going to look at some of the strategies. Last but not least, we will look at the role of the health worker in community participation. And at that stage, I will look more so at the leadership role the fact that a lot of the participants of the MPH program go back in senior leadership positions, and so we look at that kind of role, and then maybe mention to what can be done at line staff level, at community level, at facility level as well. I'm hoping you're seeing the screen. That's something I should check quickly on. Are you seeing my screen clearly?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, so you know, I mentioned the situation as it relates to, you know, the context for community participation. And community participation gained prominence way back in the 70s and came out of the alma mater, which I will have more on later on in this presentation. But it comes against the is given to the realities that health outcomes are directly linked to community settings and the social determinants of them. And I'm sure that you've already you're conversant enough already with social determinants of health in those kinds of factors, environmental factors, social, economic factors that impact health outcomes. And I'm sure you would have looked at the issues of the settings approach to community health, where there's an understanding that health and the outcomes that we are seeing usually are completely or mostly interlinked into how people live, how we live our lives. Is very directly connected to things as it relates to the environment, the availabilities of jobs, those kinds of important factors like social justice, issues of inequalities, access, whether it is fair access, unfair access, those kinds of important considerations. So the context around community participation is that kind of understanding, that kind of belief. The evidence is there that says important factors, macro factors, which I'm going to be talking a little bit more about, directly have impact on people's health outcome. For a long time, and this will come about in discussions I will have later on as it relates to paradigm shift. In the old system, we talked a lot about just a personal responsibility. If you do this, you do that. At a very individual level, that it would see the best pictures ever in terms of health outcome. But there is an understanding that people don't have, if huge issues around access are not addressed, if issues around employment are not addressed, if issues around housing is not addressed, if all those things, employment, education, all those social determinants are not given careful consideration, then certainly we will have issues. So that's the context for part of the context for community participation. The other important consideration for community participation is that people are considered, and in the old model, persons tend to be considered as coming only with problems, not necessarily having the resources, not really having the sensibilities, not having the skills, not having the ideas about what they would want for themselves. In this context of community participation, see these community members and individuals and householders and people who make up community as being resourceful, as being able, capable, not having everything right, not having some of the tools that are necessary, not necessarily having the same access as one community or the other community or blah, blah, blah. But I'll discuss community in a little bit more detail. So we talk about what we're talking about when we say community. But it's important that the context, again, bears in mind that the community can get some things done and can have some levels of control and have inputs, insight, can define their own problems, can identify their own problems, and certainly can identify solutions. Other important consideration is a respect for community from the point of view of seeing them as community members as an important part of the voting bloc, having rights, having can be a part of cancel culture, consumers can make decisions about where they're spending money, whether or not they can attract money to a geographical community for investment in the things that ultimately impact health. And just something I wanted to share here. Every time I talk, I don't know if you've come across the concept of the downstream impact, because sometimes when you talk about health and health outcomes, people see everything in a disease context. Clinical issues come to mind right away, and they're saying, then how she talk about employment, and she talk about this, and she talk about all of that. We don't have control. I merely work in the Ministry of Health. I'm only making policies. I'm only concerned about messaging about use a condom, this, that. But at the end of the day, there's so many other factors at play. And when you sit at the level of the MPH program, and you're going back as policymakers, program managers, leadership, certainly having the ideas about what goes into health outcome, how communities are part of all of that is very important. Another important factor here, I alluded to it, was that community has power. I mentioned it with cancel culture. Cancel culture is a buzzword now, but it essentially is saying, listen, if there is an issue or a matter or something that impacts the well-being of communities, individuals, the householders, then the community has the power to do something about it. In Jamaica, I know there is the issue of people power, people being able to say, we're going to protest. Right, we're going to ask for this. We can do a lot of writing. We can organize ourselves in groups and get something done. We're trying to move a facility from this particular area. Understanding power lies in people's hands, not just on that election time. Social media, the role that plays now too, in terms of the power of the community, is something that has to be brought there when we have the discussion and look at the context as it relates to community participation. So communities can advocate and the whole question of having justice, having fair access, having certain kinds of things that are addressed at community level is also, as I said, part of the context. So this issue, I mentioned that I'm overseas right now. I'm Jamaican. Somebody asked me how we're coping here, you know, especially the changes, the direction, the fact that COVID-19 kind of set a lot of things back for some persons. The public health has become almost like a threat. Some people are not, you know, there's almost like research is under fire, or science is under fire. We've had a measles outbreak, we've had kinds of things, a whole lot of controversy. And these are some considerations when you think about how key the community is and how key the community participation is, especially at this time. I know it might seem far, not really our concern, you know, what's happening here, and I'm being mindful, you know, this is mindful of what I say, but it's important to think about community participation as it relates to the impact that the macro changes, the thrust now for you know, a small group of powerhouses to impact not just legislation, to impact the flow of money, the tariff, how that will impact small island economies. You know, the Jamaica relies heavily on certain kinds of exports and all of that. Those things trickle down to community. It impacts employment issues, it impacts housing issues, you know, and even the position we've taken over time with immunization. I mean, as I've said, we have an attack on public health right now where they're looking at, I heard something about the MMR being splitting in all kinds of things, and you know, let me just jump off that. But at the end of the day, those big picture targets, those big issues, those trade issues, those policy issues that are not necessarily driven at a national level, but at an international level, they in the long run impact countries and impact people's budgets and impact livelihood and impact environment and sets the tone for what you see. So the community being on board as a partner with us as healthcare providers, as managers, as leaders, is something that has to be brought to bear when we think community participation. And the sharp focus with COVID-19 was that it brought some lessons on how important, I mean, I think this is the time it was understood that a community that is not sufficiently engaged with public health is sometimes, it leads to things like, you know, resistance, you know, and then it leads to gaps with service delivery, it leads to mistrust, it leads to all kinds of things, and that's something we have to bear in mind. So it's put on this slide for us to just think through those considerations. The pandemic, you know, I don't know how much discussions, it's not fully exhausted, but we do know that this, it kind of showed up where we were in terms of that disconnect with the community, and therefore important gains have been, you know, kind of eroded. I keep using the immunization issue as one thing because of the fact that that COVID vaccine seemed to have been the beginning of a kind of time to mistrust government efforts. Let's you know, so having communities working closely with us is important to restore that kind of thing. And so it's right there as a consideration for us. These are some considerations that I might have alluded to before. All those global factors directly impact what's happening and therefore gives rise to the need for community participation. And these are some other considerations here that we must bear in mind. All right, so I'm gonna move quickly now to talk about what is a community. And there are a few definitions I have here, but essentially just a group of persons who share a neighborhood interest, identity, need, or common circumstances. For this presentation, I want us to think about a community in the context of a community that shares geographical boundary, a locale. So there is a community of interest, like you could say the community of Spanish-speaking persons, or community of elderly persons. I'm not referring to that community for this presentation. For this one, we're talking about the geographic community. And so I'm talking about communities in a particular health district, a community in a particular neighborhood, just joined by a certain boundaries and are served based on where we have our facilities. So that's something that I would love for us to bear in mind. What then is community participation? And it speaks to allyship, partnership, joining together. It is a concept, it's a process. It talks about where people in this particular geographic area join with those persons or ally with those persons who can help with one, identification of needs and problems and look at strengths as well. And it is a focus on the collective group responsibility as it relates to planning and, just control and taking actions to deal with those important things that affect a community, whether it is crime, whether it's need to address with chronic illnesses. The long and short of it is a collective, it's a group coming together to say, listen, I'm in my citizen association and I live in this particular location and we're working together because we've discovered that we have this issue. It might not be the obvious health issue. It could have been an issue that we have too many young persons living in a particular area unemployed. And you're saying, but that has nothing to do with health. The evidence shows that unemployment increases, so does the quality of life. Better health outcomes. People go for screening. People sometimes eat healthier. People sometimes have a little different outlook. So income is tied to those kinds of things. Education too is tied to those things. We try and do it to of health are some of the reasons why we give so much emphasis to community participation. Community participation is considered central to community development. And I'm not sure what the agency is now named because some of the agencies back in Jamaica have undergone some name changes, but I know the SDC values community participation, and I believe it as essential to development, essential to the concept of prosperity, essential to the concept, so on and so forth. Another important consideration with community participation is education and empowerment. It looks at efficacy at individual and group levels. It looks at skill building, it looks at training, capacity building, the work. So community participation uses those as tools for us to have the long-term goal of good health outcomes, good social development, sustainable social development, sustainable development. So again, I mentioned the word process. Not an exam question that asks you about community participation. It's a process. It's not a one-day occasion. Sometimes you work with the Ministry of Health or you work in a particular CBO and you have funding allocated for certain projects. They type the word community participation in it. It's almost like a buzzword. The community participated. And you say, okay, I'm going to go to one meeting here or there, and that's it. It is really a process, and it's a time-consuming process. Has a lot of efforts to be made for it. So as leaders, as you hear, and I mentioned that I was going to talk about rules, but I mentioned it here too. So this class purpose, apart from making sure that we're doing the class for exam purposes, class also to go back to understand that when you have whether it's the BCC officer or the health education officer or whoever is involved in that, this is a process and it takes a little time to get to the place where you're one, defining the issues, understanding the issue. On the surface, there are problems that you could say, okay, there is a problem with running belly in this. But when you get to the community, there's an assumption that it's just poor hygiene. They don't want to wash their hands. But then the health education officer gets there to realize that most households don't have running water. How do we fix that? Defining that problem is going to it comes out with the research, it comes out with the needs assessment, it comes out with the research, it comes out with understanding what questions are. So it's not that, and it could be that you learn that people don't realize that hand washing needs to be done to the toilet before you go to the room. But at the end of the day, it's a process that helps you to understand the parameters. And then you move forward with making some decisions, and then you move to replace our strategies and moving forward, planning and developing to achieve certain kinds of change. So it's a process, and it's a process that should occur even when there's no problem. It's not always to tackle a problem, because remember, in primary health care, we're talking about preventative health care. And so whatever is done kind of like very proactively, whether it is a community has said, listen, as I said, we have too many young men around here who just don't have anything to do. And he said, but that happened to the Ministry of Health. But the community is concerned that there are persons, so many young people, and they realize hygiene arms, and we want to come up with a program where we talk about maybe conflict resolution, we do this, we do that. We want something that engages young people, that them work, and that them go into exercise program. That all of that is happening at the problem even happens, and it is to be supported.
This is fine. Okay, wait a minute. It's like I'm over this. We come after as a sleeping time. No, I think I'm underestimate people comment or friend before I'm gonna go mine.
Guys, her battery just died. She wasn't plugged in, so she's going for a charger. She'll be back in like a minute or so.
Okay. She has to be old and sleep and stay over the
You heard what's it?
Yeah, we're ready.
Sebastian,
Yeah, what's up?
question. When it is that she comes back, can you just also ask her to stay closer to the microphone because she keeps kind of
You
toning
could
in?
just tell her, you know.
You know, but it sounds so much nicer coming from you.
Does it?
I think it could.
Exactly.
My goodness, I apologize. This was a while ago. I had this thing without something I didn't realize. So my apologies. Are you hearing me?
Could you turn up your volume or go closer to the mic, please, Miss Pearson?
Okay, hold
We're not
on.
hearing you clear.
Oh my goodness. Were you hearing me any at all earlier though?
Yes, yes, yes.
This is my son leaving house community.
Hi.
Babysit my mother. Just a little bit of my business. My mother have dementia, so. Okay, we're trying to turn up the mic. So I'm an IT guy here on this side.
I'll leave the voice.
Mhm.
Now, when every time you. Oh, but I thought it's like a. Yes, see.
All right, are you hearing me any better right now? Any little better than before?
Danielle, you hearing any better?
Yes.
Hello? Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
All
just-
right, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Gerald. All right, Mr. Daniel picture on here. I don't know if it's Daniel Walters.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, all right, hold on. Let me share screen back and go back to where I was. I see. Hold on. Where was I in all of this? Current slide. Yeah, so just the point I was making is I actually went through the process in a way that will be emphasized over and over in this presentation, because it's something that is the WHO articulates that one, for community participation to be really as effective and solid as it should be, then the people in communities, the community itself has to be just fully on board, actively engaged in one, defining the issues. And I kind of lost my train of thought because I know I was going through an issue a while ago, but I'll get back there. But the long and short of it is that community participation is a process, I said, that it requires time, it requires effort, having an understanding of it, if you're not exactly on the field practicing it, is to be understanding when that work plan comes to your desk for approval, when that health education officer says, I am meeting with the community. Yes, you said there was an issue out there, but when I got out there, these were the other considerations. This is where the community ed space is, working with their needs, we're seeing where we're going, looking at their structure, looking at the organizations that exist, looking at their capacity. I believe our funding and money will be better spent this way or that way based on what the community is saying, because the community would have been informing and defining, setting parameters, looking closely at what their needs and underlying factors in a particular issue, looking at what they can do for themselves, looking at strengths, looking at assets, looking at resources, looking at what they don't need or what they need, and then certainly making decisions about to do. No, this is 21st century world, more than ever. This kind of thinking started so far before we ever had the going to YouTube to learn to do this and do that and being their own doctor and nurse and expert. And so more than ever in community participation, and I'll talk about this when it comes to paradigm shift, the health worker is more and more being viewed not necessarily as an expert, but certainly playing a role as a facilitator, trying to keep the engagement open, trying to hear what the community wants to do about a need, a situation, how they want to take on preventative actions. Community participation involves coming up with their own game plan, own work plan, and then taking action. And this is with something that was alluded to earlier on, that with community participation, and I don't know if I to it earlier, but yes, probably, is that decisions that are made by the community and actions that are taken on by a community that is kind of self-driven is sometimes adhered to, and community take ownership and less likely abandon initiatives that they come up with. So that's something that is to be considered when we think community participation. This is just a reminder, all these articles, all these policy positions underpin the importance of community participation. The Alma Ata Declaration in 78, Charter on health promotion from 86, Caribbean Charter on health promotion, and certainly Local Agenda 21, 1998. These are some, as you're writing this scholarly article, whether it is for an assignment now or for the essay come next June, or maybe even for an exam as part of mid-semester, you have to become familiar with these documents and what is espoused there. Remember, a lecture like this is doesn't answer everything. It is to, you'll see the reading list at the very end that more or less indicates some of the literature that can be read, that you are supposed to be coming a little bit more comfortable with. Some of you, based on your background, you have been already exposed to some of the material here, but it's always good. It's important not just for this class of community participation, but the entire area around primary health care. So just something here. The declaration emphasizes self-reliance, and some of it is going to be almost repetitious, and a repetition of what I said earlier. It talks about self-help. It talks about being fully on board from planning, implementation, evaluation, and it talks about capacity building. Getting communities to take charge, getting them to the place of readiness to, and just some tangible examples of readiness, training, working with a community. As I said, it's costly, time consuming, and some manpower is ever dedicated to really doing the kind of work. But if we don't have the manpower in the Ministry of Health, and I know that many of you here are, then working with other groups that work directly with community is important. And it might mean just building capacity around project design, building capacity around program planning, budgeting, needs identification, and these are just administrative kind of skills, but it builds the capacity of a community to take charge of. It is working with these little organizations like a community-based assist association, crime prevention group, whichever organizations exist in the community. Can we take it on in the ministry? Not necessarily, but as I say, working with those other entities that work at field level and work with them so that sometimes you don't end up duplicating roles. And of course, building capacity around health promotion, building capacity around health education, providing content, clarifying, helping to strengthen communities. Knowledge is power. Knowledge doesn't necessarily mean behavior change, and that will be taken care of in your health promotion class, but certainly it's part of the building up. And I mention it here because it's part of the development. Why community participation? People have a right. The democratic world believes we're not a communist world in Jamaica. and like the rest of the Caribbean, believes in democracy, believe in people having the right to speak, to make choices, having the right over your own body, having the right to organize for the well-being of the community. That recognition is fundamental here. Alluded to earlier up, and as I go through my slides, you're gonna say, but some of it reinforcement is important. So it's been shared here. Practical experience show that, and this is something I mentioned, people are committed to initiatives and efforts that they're a part of, that their voices were heard on. If I am working with a community and I have come with a top-down thing where I plan to do, I want to just get one activity done. I really don't care too much, and I am going to be planning, and I set the tune, and I walk into the place, and I say, we're going to do a walk. We're promoting healthy lifestyle, and we only want to do a walk. And the people's concept of a healthy lifestyle includes football playing, it includes dance exercise, this and that. Then when we have whatever we say we're having, a lot of the support and involvement will be there. That's just a very microscopic thing I'm giving as an example. So that's just to say people adhere to ideas and practices and solutions and just activities that they are a part of. It's like their brainchild. And of course, community participation is inherently empowering. It is thinking of the concept of when I'm doing something and I do it well, and I get a chance to be a part of a process. Anything as individuals, I'm talking individual examples. When we do something well once, it just says I can do something else bigger and better. So the concept around community participation is that at the end of the day, when the community is involved in those things that impact their livelihoods, impact health outcomes, impact just the development of the community, it is crucial. I think I went up and down with this slide a while ago, but better decisions, these are just some pointers. If I was asked a question in the exam to say, listen, why community health? You should be able to just reel off all of this. Community participation is about pulling together. The old system said the community was filled with problems. The old system or old paradigm said the community had pure problems. The new paradigm talks about community full of talents, materials, can do this, can make changes, have ideas on how a problem can be addressed. As I used the example of promoting physical activity, and we may say, okay, I want to be able to push only walking, and I'm going to promote this particular thing. Or I might be able to, the community might say, listen, we get our steps in with dance, we get our steps in with a football match, we are into dandy shandy, we are into netball. It is a place with the community, is a place of people. We make up community. You make up communities, I make up a community. And so when we think about all that we bring to the table, just imagine what a community has available for improving the conditions of the community itself. Just reminders here. A community that is involved in its affairs, a community that is involved with the issues, that is fair, the understanding that we must take away from a presentation like this is that community is so resourceful. Communities know what rumors are circulating, what misinformation exists. communities can tell you when there are disease trends. This seems to be there. I mean, there's almost like the first detectives. They can clarify misunderstandings. Because as health workers providing services with all that data, that hard data, without the nuances, without the understanding of behaviors in a community, without understanding that there's a clique here or there's a this here, or understanding why people do what they do, communities provide that kind of clarification. That clarification comes in your needs assessment, which is going to be, I'm sure, is dealt with by your health promotion specialist. That will talk about that in detail, but that is how community participation is essential and useful. You know, it provides insight on stigmas. It pretty much is so useful. So useful. And I know that some of the professionals here might be saying, I will not be involved in that. I am making decisions. I'm going to be working with a parish work plan. I'm doing a national work plan. That is no concern of mine. But I want us to leave knowing that this, as MPH graduates, ultimately, we should go back as part of the change agent. So if you say, I don't need an extra health education officer, if I say, I need that person, I can understand why we need to work with SDC. I can understand why we need to work with the police or the other entities that are involved with community work because of presentation or because of the kind of information that is shared even in this presentation. So I mentioned a lot about old and new paradigm. You know, the globe has seen shifts in thinking and outlook. The old thinking focused on problems, fixing. It was a very medical model. Concerned with healing, concerned with prescription, concerned with treating health as a product of just an individual effort. It was viewed poor health outcomes as just faults of a one-on-one person, you know. And at the end of the day, that kind of thinking has slowly had to shift to understand that most of what I mentioned about access to education, access to housing, access to good jobs, being treated fairly, access to healthcare itself, access to markets, all those things bear on the individual. And with that kind of thinking, there is this new paradigm. And in this paradigm that we found ourselves with, and I can tell you, social media is making that even more possible. The community, people we serve, the consumer, the client, partners out there, the health worker is viewed now as more of a facilitator. And the community is seen more as an equal partner. And if you look at what we talked about earlier, what I mentioned earlier about being equal in terms of defining the problem, coming up with a solution, working on the work plan, setting up objectives, looking at an action plan, then this is how the community is seen as equal partners sitting across from you, not only in the community, but certainly, hopefully, I don't know if this has gotten to the place where we have the community-based community leaders sitting across from us, whether it is a medical officer of health in their office, meeting with maybe the president of citizen association groups or whatever, but the community and their representatives, their nominated representatives, for the purposes of political power, the nominated representative would have been the MP, or the is supposed to be the councillor. But that is on a political level, where the CBOs have their various presidents, secretaries, because you certainly can't have an entire from of community from one geographic district turning up to say, listen, it might not be practical to do that. But the consultations have started, whether it is on a small group in that area, leading up to a bigger group at the level, and ultimately having their voice heard. This is what the paradigm shift is saying. Listen, equal partners. The shift also talks about, and this is okay, so the shift, and I think, as I said, with social media, I think we're there with a lot of it. So the old model talked about problems, issues, prescriptive, focused heavily on physical and technical issues, talked about just putting in time and, you know, just delivering services and, you know, minus any inputs from the community. So that whole shift did not see the community as being articulate enough, bright enough to be able to say, listen, I live in this particular area, and I would love to have, and I know there are rules about how we allocate our resources, whether it is to look at a type 1 facility, it is to do the type 3, all these considerations are, we have that is still part of what the old model looks like. The new model says a group is organized and a community group looks and says, listen, it would be good, given the population size, I think we could have a facility, a visiting nurse, once or twice per month or year. Is it practical? Who knows? But at the end of the day, it is bearing in mind that the community has a voice. So that's the old paradigm, did not have that kind of consideration. In a new paradigm, the link with the community is a very active, engaging, interactive one. Seems ideal, seems hard to get to, seems not practical. Some persons who are still stuck in that model will say, all I wish I talk about that because we have my program trying to write. I don't have no time to work on this. We already know that this is what the ministry's programs are informed by who is paying us, whether it is WHO's funding, whether it is, you know, global funds, wherever the money is coming from, that's where the talk is going to be listened to. But the very same funders are bound to this concept of community participation and are also embracing the idea that, listen, even though we have the agenda here, we still want to have the community's voice represented. So in the new paradigm, the community is seen as an active participant, capable of having a say in anything that is going to impact their health and well-being. In the old dimension, the focus was on the physical and the technical. In the new dimension, just as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there's an understanding that many systems are impacting health outcomes. There's an understanding that so many things are a part of health and health and well-being. And what you ultimately get at the end of the day is never just limited to prescriptions and clinical issues, but bigger picture issues: access to safe water, access to mental health services, access to green spaces, access to jobs, access to legal representation. All these in the long run impact the outcome. So it's spelled out a little bit more here. These point: ecological, is political, is economic. community participation at its highest level is political. It's political, and sometimes people think about it and say, we come to talk about political. Of course, it is a community voice and advocating for what it wants. All right, so in the whole system, the focus of participation is just throwing resources at it, put money, and let's do some things for the community. Let's fix the problem for them. Let's make sure that we go down and we spray mosquitoes, and let's do adult control. Let's provide the contraceptives. Let's do that kind of thing. It's providing those things. Nothing is wrong with providing those things, but at the end of the day, the focus of participation this time is kind of like a proactive, high ideal kind of focus, where it is looking at leadership that says, come up with strategies that address those social issues, those cultural issues that ultimately also impact those socio-economic issues that impact health, because those play such a big role. You know, at the end of the day, you're saying, yeah, I can run with my immunization program, make sure that, you know, I want to have uptake, I want to make sure all of that is going well. There are other factors impacting well-being that cannot necessarily be addressed in the Ministry of Health. What is the role of the community health worker in the whole system? Expert. The role in the new paradigm, a facilitator, an empowerer, activist. No, a lot of this might not be very practical. I mean, we have our work plan, we have job descriptions that spell out how we function. And so some of these roles are also played by other entities, other agencies. I alluded to the Social Development Commission on this one as potential leaders, and some of you are already leaders, middle managers within the Ministry of Health. Understanding the issues around this is important, and understanding who allies will be, who you will have to work closely with to get to the place where there's some amount of a community is sufficiently mobilized to do certain kinds of things. It's going to be something to be considered. Right? So having talked about this paradigm shift, we are at that place where I don't know where along the continuum we are in the shift, but I know there's a slow change. There are countries around the globe that have embraced the community as an empowered equal partner. In Canada has embraced that for in very serious ways, and they have funded a lot of their social mobilization programs to reflect this kind of thinking. And certainly there are other examples that you will probably read about and think about. So we're now at this place where we're going to be hopefully getting into some group work. But just so we understand, I'm looking at my time quickly. There are different levels of participation, from tokenism to full participation. And in the Ministry of Health, and for those persons from the other regions, your health authorities, your organizations that are responsible for managing the affairs, the issues of health in your country. How we embrace community participation is some people are still stuck in some ministry program, kind of still reflect the old paradigm. Some of other program areas in the Ministry of Health are shifting with the new paradigms, and That's something we can discuss when this class is over. But it's important for us to understand that community participation occurs along a continuum. It can be as little as just give some information, talk to the community, tell them what we plan to do, and just say, well, they have participated. And it can be as great as having a community so organized, so in touch with its needs, so properly functioning that at the end of the day, they literally approach us professionals and ask for assistance as is needed. Decide what they want, know what their problems are, know what their strengths are, know what they're gonna tackle, know how these things are connected to physical health and wellness, know how to navigate certain kinds of things, and only call for help. And that would have been at the level of partnership at the highest level. So just as the slide says, participation can occur where there's just given a little or no information to the community, or it can happen to where the community has control, which is the latter argument that I made a while ago. Several factors impact where we are in the shift, you know. It comes down to the organization's values and outlook. It comes down to what is happening globally, you know. It comes down to whether communities are sufficiently organized. If you have a lot of fractured communities that have no community-based groups, they have no functioning citizen association, people are just very individualized, there is not a collective spirit, there is not a philosophy on the ground that we look out for each other and that we're organizing to do with street cleaning, and we're organizing to paint the school, and we're not doing none of those things, then certainly, you know, the level of participation might affect yours, you know. It is also dependent on the culture, big picture, big climate. I think I mentioned that before. So the levels of participation is dependent on all those factors that I just mentioned. There is a very important, I don't know, chance at your a slide here. Yes. So
Sorry, Ms. Pearson, could you remind me what CBO is, please?
oh, community-based, my apologies, community-based organizations, and examples of these,
Okay.
your citizens association, your police youth clubs, your neighborhood watches, those groups, organizations that are in a community that drive development and are, you know, have the well-being of the community at heart. A listing of those kinds of community-based organizations tend to reside with I don't know if you have social development commission still, but they have those listings, those groups that are involved with building a community, welfare work, whatever it is, the things that impact the community. And I probably should ask this question. Is the Social Development Commission still the Social Development Commission, or is it named something else?
No, it's the same social,
Amen, amen. Amen. And so that group is charged with that kind of responsibility. And when I think of how scarce our resources are and how our focus sometimes gets very focused on just tackling problems and just dealing with the here and now issues, sometimes it's good to know who else is out there doing work with community so that collaboration can happen. So that at the end of the day, we have true community participation. So if you look on the screen here, have this ladder of participation. Let me see if I can, let me. This ladder of participation speaks to, it's from one extreme to the end, to the other. At the top, we have the highest level of participation, which is more or less along the lines of those top three rungs: partnership, delegated power, and citizen control. And somewhere in the middle, we have placation, consultation, informing. We have therapy, we have manipulation. Now, them bottom pieces is still something that we don't want to say it's frowned on, but those are not the ideals that we're striving for when we think community participation, especially when we talk, when I've made the case, hopefully earlier on, that listen, community have power, community can think, community can be creative, community can more than define, help, show us where areas, what is to be focused on. And so I'm gonna ask at this time, maybe I think this is the time I'm gonna ask us to split into groups using this slide for the most part. There are some case studies there and I think we have 30 persons both between the classroom and online put together. And so in groups of 4, I'm gonna ask Sebastian to do the breakout now, but just before we do the breakout, just so I want to kind of make it kind of real to us about levels of participation. There is a community in Jamaica that I'm familiar with, and even though I've been away for long, I believe what I saw back some years ago is still relevant to give you an idea of a community that seems to have its act together. And that's a community of Longville Park. Longville Park, I don't know my brain just about. Longville Park in Clarendon. Longville Park has at the time, and I hope still does, as an active citizens association. The community is a pretty large kind of dormitory community, but at the same time, the community members are so actively involved in ensuring that their community thrives, that their property value remains high, that them can raise them children, them can do all of those. These are almost indirect health outcomes. That they can walk safely, that they can enjoy going home, and that they can be safe. And that community way back in the days, and I think it's an NHT community, because I remember there was a NHT skiing competition, and Longville tends to do very well in terms of winning. But part of my own work with Longville Park came when I was working in Clarendon. And what Longville Park was able to do, they demonstrated some of the very tenets, some of the very things I've spoken to a while about being able to take control. They epitomize the citizen control kind of thing. They had one, I remember we talked about some of the factors that promote community participation, the presence of CBOs. So they had community-based organizations, whether it was a citizen association, a sports group, or whatever. But what Longville Park was able to do was that they, during their life course, their day-to-day activity, decided on what mattered to them. There was an issue with being concerned about crime and crime prevention, and I think they were able to lobby and get a police post there. They were able to get a green space by advocating. They were able, and one of the things I mentioned earlier, that a community that is actively participating tends to be able to attract funding. They're able to write their own grants. They get more funding than one that is not organized. So in a community, when there are high levels of participation, community defines problem, advocate for changes, get their needs met, get their attention, get the focus on themselves. So for me, Longville Park, as you're about to break out and think about the case stories that is in front of you, the respective ones of 4 cases, think about it. I'm giving you the example of Longville Park. They were able to, they only called us, we didn't have to approach them. They called us to say, listen, we think we want to start an exercise program, or we're doing this. We would love to have somebody help us with screening, or we would love to have this or that. We've noticed this issue. Can we have somebody speak to the issue of mental health? Therefore, it wasn't us just getting up and saying, well, them have a problem. These people knew what were their concerns, and they knew how they were going to manage their issues. They were able to write their own projects and stuff. Now, how did they do that? One of the answers to that is that the Social Development Commission, which is a group that I would advocate that you partner with at a national, regional, and parish level. So if you are not already, I know MOH also will go to the parish council meetings, and that is probably like the best interagency kind of opportunity. It is where you can collaborate a little better. But as leaders, everybody in this room right now, assuming you're going to assume some leadership position or you're already in leadership, you have to understand the building of alliances, which is paramount if we're going to have community participation, and knowing that we have very limited resources to do that kind of facilitation. And we're going to have to work with those entities that are already working with the community. So SDC was able to work with Longville Park, and I think some of the members of that association, this is association, were health workers too, so that it doesn't hurt to have a highly educated, involved, engaged community to make sure that the community participates. And through community participation, has all voices as much as possible represented. That's the loudest, most important, special people talking all the time, you know, just the principle. They look upon it and everybody involved in ideas, because some places where you get good ideas come from just a person that you'd say, so that person has so much sense. But I'm giving you the Longville Park synopsis as kind of like a best practice in Jamaica, I would say, from what I remember, from what was clear cut. I think they won the best SCEP, whatever scheme competition, and they attracted a lot of funding. They were not necessarily a problem area for us to say, well, there's a family intervention there. And they were the ones that looked for the partnership with the various entities, whether it is the Ministry of Health or the fire or whoever. They brought the people on to meet their needs, and they did it in a very proactive way. They didn't wait for issues to start affecting them. They looked at their communities and said, I want an investment, I pay for my house around here, and I'm joining the Cities Association. I don't want to open eyeglass around here, and blah, blah, blah. That kind of consideration. So that's something to think about when we think citizen control, if we want an example of citizen control. So now I'm going to just quickly ask, Sebastian, if he can put you guys in groups, please for me. Groups, I would appreciate that. And if there's any question before you go, there is the levels of participation here. This is you can use this one or this. The instruction is 15 minutes to read the case, decide which participation you're seeing there, make a case for it in 3 minutes. Elect somebody to speak on behalf of the group. Each group might be about 7 individuals, 7, 8 persons. And then we come back and take it from there.
Miss, did you send the cases?
Yes, they have it. Hold on 1 second. Sebastian, are you there? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. My mom is having one of her night terrors. So if you hear her screaming in the background. All right, so while you're doing the breakout group, 15 minutes, and then we come back. When we come back, I'll just go over some things, but that pretty much is it.
Which is okay for me to say, when we read it, we'll find out what level, what ladder they're on.
Students in here or group one? Yes. Okay. What is the case for group one?
Oh, you know that? Oh,
You know what I mean? That's all.
yeah. That email.
I see it, it was five.
Don't forget this level.
No, I just didn't know the assignment had gone on already.
Yeah.
So those in the class should be able to access it from their computer,
Should be.
from the class website.
Yep. Not how you are.
Yeah, when I said it in the group.
Alright.
You know what? I can print one.
If you go onto the class website.
Yeah, we're gonna send it,
Dr. James. Is Dr. James?
Hello, my dear, how are you?
We're too happy to hear your voice. Listen, more getting up to let put on.
As much as I've been trying to mask my voice, I have not succeeded.
I am so happy to hear your voice. I hear to all about the bus.
Okay, and I understand when I sit here, you're able to see me.
Wait, hold on, let me see what is happening here. Hold on one second. What am I doing? That's hold on one second.
I'm probably in the group one room.
Yes, I think I just
But it's all right, when the group comes back into the larger room, I come
yes,
back.
I'm thinking I'm seeing you a little bit. No, I'm gonna see. Oh, see, look at me at the excitement. Hi.
Afterward, before you close, we will talk.
Of course. Thank you. I'm always so happy to see and hear from you. But you know, so I'm here with the group. They're getting into the little group, and we'll come back together.
All right. So
Yes. All right. Okay. Then take care. I'm going to. My mom is going crazy, and my son can't control her, so I'm going back to her now.
all right.
All right. Okay.
Where is your community participation?
Community participation in underdeveloped countries, countries level. The water shortage in that place is particularly acute, as in many Latin American cities, naturally more urban services are provided to peripheral areas. It was noted that originally inhabitants of the barrios marginalis received their water from private vending operations and prices estimated at 34 times higher and official government rate to be better better off families who were connected to the town system. Okay. So in order to meet the growing water needs of the barrios marginalis, Honduras National Water and Sanitation Agency explored alternative methods of water supply in a project funded by the governments of Canada and Sweden and the UNICEF Community of Canada. The approach of element in the water supply project is community participation. The most requested for the construction and new water system. Once request is received, a study is done by the water authority to determine which approach best serves the community and the amount of community is sufficient, organized, and enthusiastic enough to construct and administer such a system. Water source belongs to the municipal authority, or the community is responsible for operating and maintaining the system. Must provide all the services. That's crazy. The central authority designs the system, covers many of the initial costs and provides technical assistance. Community forms a water association, then supplies the workforce to construct the facility. Purchasing of the materials is responsible for administration and maintenance of the system upon completion. Collects fees from users to pay for the water supply. What is at the top of the ladder?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
That's a lot of
No, but it's a lot that they have to do.
citizen control.
But what I would think of is extension, suppose kind of stick it over and say, all right, yeah, start this thing. Like someone like, can't afford. But first of all, there's already iniquity.
To organize and do all of this.
Because that somebody from the community can roll up the truth. Or there's some inequity in the community, but some could pay privately already, the better off.
So the other participation now, so the stakeholders have the idea, set up this project and come to facilitators for advice, discussion and support. Facilitators do not direct, but offer advice to citizens to consider. As a report, the control one. The other one, the goal is left to have been set by the facilitator what the resources and responsibility for solving the problem are passed to stakeholders. Yes, so now you don't delegate the power. There are clear lines of accountability and two-way communication with those away the power.
Partnership, stakeholders and directly making a decision.
It's a partnership.
And
Sorry, guys. Question. I'm just trying to gain some clarity. What are we supposed to be doing in these breakout rooms again?
Figure out which level of participation or case.
Yeah, the follow-up.
Oh, which level? So we're just supposed to identify the level of participation?
And discuss why that level or something.
And discuss why that level was chosen.
Why that level is applicable to the case that is.
Oh, okay. So, okay, so basically just select the level and explain your reasoning. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you. Popping back out.
I see more like delegated power to me. But it sounds like vacation to me.
Vacation?
Yes.
Partnership.
Stakeholders have an active
No.
role as shapers of opinions, ideas and outcomes.
We final decision.
remains.
Them own the resource, they.
Them no money, them have been-
No, meaning the other folks own the resource. And so the local community, they don't have to kind of go with what them said. They say as a community doing the work, but the big boys are actually.
Power,
one out of the three of
Since for-
Remember, that's what I'm very, yeah.
Find the workers and everybody, and
Right.
collect the money and organize
Right.
everything, so that all of this, they don't take for them.
Right, they was look at, if they right, kind of them up right, let them up right to them, let them read it and approve it before they can even grant them this water.
They don't put them money.
And I get sponsorship from Canada and Sweden.
Yeah, but they still have to put the money and all that.
And I find employees to run it
And they have to collect the money.
and not pay. It's crazy. I thought this was just a basic right that they should have. Anyway. And then it seems like it's a privilege.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's on that
Yes, approximately
Because
four,
they have to
four constituents.
I'm gonna find the workforce, purchase some of the material, responsible for administration, that's some of the partnership.
I think it's partnership because it's not fully passed. The facilitator, but the resources are responsible because they're all the problem across the stakeholders. So delegated power, it doesn't seem like they get any money, they get some help, but it's more of like a partnership.
It's not partnership, they get you some help, but then they have to do a lot of the work, themselves and a lot of the organization.
No, not speaking. Don't.
Oh, this is a cute, they don't have any few months. So the shape of this person. You know, who started exploring this alternative is the government, the Honduras National Water and Sanitation Agency. So they realized the acute need for the water. Because they said the water shortage in this state population is particularly harsh. I want them to stop background check. First, the new urban services are provided further from the area. And we know that inhabitants usually receive water, well off ones from this private vending operator. So they know to deal with this growing need for water, they explored alternative methods in the community involved with this. They started to explore alternatives and get this project funded by Canada and Sweden. What they realized though is that the communities needed the participation is needed for this project to work on. So they're saying the community must request help for the construction and implementation of the system. And once the community send in this request, a study is done by the Water Authority, which is the government of Sweden, to determine which approach best serves the community and whether or not the community is sufficiently organized and enthusiastic enough to construct and administer such a system. So if them feel like the community not well organized, they don't have a leader, person who's going to be the maintenance person, the finance person, they may not.
That's why I said I think it's a partnership. Because they have to
But stakeholders don't actually have.
yeah, because they remember the government has direct involvement. They don't.
The
But
stakeholders,
the
the community,
stakeholders don't, that, yeah.
yeah, the stakeholders, the community, stakeholders have direct involvement in the decision-making process. It's not like that make them a big team.
Yeah, I think they're placating people, they're making them feel like they're a part, but it's not.
But I have never been placated and have to do so much work.
But that's the point, that's the point.
I don't see how it could be placation.
You know what, listen to me, this is how placation works. You are sold an idea that make you feel like you're a part of the process, but fundamentally, you don't actually own the resources. And yet you're in the brunt of the work and you're supposed to go merrily along with it.
Oh, but it's
So
like.
they're placating, that's what they're doing, they say, yeah man, we're partnering with you and stuff, but they own the stuff. They make all the final decisions, they decide if you're adequate or not adequate.
But then how come they collect, how come the stakeholders
So
are
that
the
is
one
the problem.
collecting fees from users to pay? Like I never see the government giving away the collection of money.
Yeah.
In a placation.
So that's the part, but it also doesn't say what they do with the fees when they collect. So maybe it doesn't say what you have.
No, they have.
They do that means.
No, they collect it and keep it because they're in charge of the repairs, you know, if anything, you see the part where it says. They're responsible for administration and purchase some materials. And they have to repair.
No, but of course, some of the great workers, and they have to find the workforce.
But the community is responsible for operating and maintaining the system and the community must provide all necessary repairs. So that's why I was saying it's sort of like, it's like, okay, fine, they start the process, but it's still not fully government money. All the government do is find some people to donate the money.
Right, so it's not the community who initiated this, it's the government.
They initiated, but at the end, it's still a partnership.
So central government.
After they collect the free money, they'll
Build it up.
build it out, but it's, the community has to do a lot of work to build it up. And then the community has to do it. to
Purchase
maintain it.
on what?
So basically, you can go down, the government saying they got no time to. I think it's a partnership. Yeah, the people are- so, I mean, not even a government, it's a private, it's funded by government of Canada. In Honduras,
Yes,
no,
they funded very
but it's not Honduras money, yeah, government of Honduras yet. It's government of
It's
Canada,
Canada,
Sweden, and the people, Honduras pull themselves out. The government of Honduras said, we just collected some free money. And y'all gonna start all this thing. And they all responsible to continue it. If it go down, y'all are done.
Or maybe we can have some not pros and cons, but have, okay, arguments for, right, because some person saying partnership, some person saying vacation. It seems like a degree of tokenism. It doesn't seem like, because the example that she gave with degree of citizen power, even though you have different levels, right? The example she gave with Longville Park, they were the ones realized them have this water problem and call National Water Commission and say, hello, we have this water problem, we need da. Who can we write to? But this is like the opposite, where they have some acute water issues. The government there recognizes that, okay, this is a real thing, and so they need to find alternatives, and their alternative is to get Canada to build out this thing. But then we realize that, oh, we alone can't take this on, so we're gonna need a community participation for this to actually work. So we need to engage them, but the community has to write first. So they have to write it, send in a request. The government now need to review the request and grant it only if they think the community is organized and enthusiastic.
And the truth is that if it was really a partnership, they would then look at capacity building to ensure that the people that can manage, they're going to raise their capacity in order that they can manage and that they can be sustainable. I feel like certainly that part up to there, so it's sketchy.
It's very sketchy because all along reading coming down, the community does not start making noise about this thing. It's just the government talking about how they plan to do this, and they realize, oh, we can't do this. So the community, I'm gonna try, sell it to them, but I don't know.
And then the funders are saying to them that you must, when the funders say you must have community participation, you're going to try to structure something that look like community participation is there. And say engage in the tokenism, you make it look like you're calling it table, but it's not.
But read back.
Because for example, why them not the community own the water resource? Why them not?
No, they said the water source belongs to the municipal authority.
Yeah, so why the community put them on the water
But the
resource?
community is responsible for operating it
That
and
makes sense.
maintaining it, and the community must provide all the repairs. So let's go back to
So the partnership
vacation.
in the power now, the government is likely to have been set by facilitator.
Mhm.
But the resources and the responsibility for solving the problem, they say that they had all the resources, but the resources that they get
Mhm.
and the responsibility to solve the problem are passed
To the stakeholders, yes.
There are clear lines of accountability, you got to fix it. You got to collect money, you got to start it out, and two-way communication with those giving away the power. So the government,
But then again, they might give out the warning, so they still only, they only
the water
source.
but everything that build up is danger.
The other thing you can really ask yourself, who is really the facilitator in this? Is it the government really, or is it the
The
funders?
government
You see the government as a facilitator.
It's kind of the government.
Not Canada, not Sweden, not UNICEF.
No, they fund the project, but everything else was talking about the municipality, which is local to Honduras. They get the funding.
This is the community must request help from the construction, for the construction of the system. Once they request,
Water authority, so they're still local. Alright, so what it is not, we know it's not manipulative. To educate or cure the stakeholders, the idea is defined and the participation is aimed only to gain public support. If we educate the stakeholders, they will change their ill-informed attitudes and they will support the plan. So it's not onus, so it's not non-participation. So we know it's definitely not that. And the informing, stakeholders are kept informed of what is going on, but are not offered the opportunity to contribute to, so it's not that. All right. Stakeholders' opinions and views are sought through various means, but final decisions are made by those doing the consulting.
And the last one is.
Yeah, right, they never asked them. So placation, no going up, so we know what it's not. So stakeholders have an active role, meaning the community, have an active role as shapers of opinions, ideas, and outcomes. You know, who brings idea? They are shapers of opinions, ideas, and outcomes. The final decision remains with the facilitators.
Can I jump in here, ladies?
Yes.
Yes.
Listen, wrap up time now, 2 minutes. And what I want, I probably said, is for a 1 minute summary of the case before you nominate somebody who will make the arguments, and certainly give a 1 minute overview of what the case is in a nutshell, and then quickly just tell us what you think it is. And give us some strong arguments to say, yes, based on so, I think this is a issue of manipulation. I think it's therapy. I think it's we thought. And then if a group member said, no, but I was the one dissenting voice. I thought this was a strong so. You give a little case and we agree to disagree, or we just say.
In the decision making process.
It's often between partnership application, because in truth,
And action.
did they have an active role as shapers of opinions? They don't. So that puts them just outside the application.
And they never have the direct involvement in the decision.
Right, so it
making.
kind of tosses them.
So it could be in between partnership, like somewhere in between this one.
And it can be as high as.
Remember, we must write on the
delegated
point for and against, so we can. So we can say why we think it's not partnership, but why we think it's application. Or what are the factors?
Alright, so what's the argument for partnership?
For partnership,
What's the argument for?
for partnership, we don't think they have a direct involvement in the decision making process.
No direct involvement in the decision making.
But they do have a clear role
They
and
do.
set responsibilities
Yeah,
and
yeah.
power, they do have that.
Right.
That is for partnership.
So they are clear rule for what participation?
Clear role, set of responsibilities and power. Achieve a shared common goal. Right. So against partnership, now you say they never had direct involvement in decision making, and it's not a two-way communication.
If you don't come here, they still need two-way communication.
Yeah.
So they must write.
Just the direct.
But two-way communication also affords people an opportunity for feedback. There was no feedback with there. These people that dictate terms and the people that.
Well, I did ask them for write and then for them to review.
Alright, and application.
To achieve clear or common goal.
put in a rule, it's responsibility.
Alright, so that's a partnership for application.
So what I think it is, I think stakeholders have an active, we're saying somewhere between partnership and application. What is it for application?
The final decision still remains with the facilitators, because they have to review and they determine, if, based on if the community is sufficiently organized and enthusiastic to construct this and administer the system.
And does the stakeholders have an active role in the shapers of opinions? No, so that is against the application, they have to be against the facility, Congress on or a combination of both.
But you're from two different, ladders.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing.
Because two people know that they can come out.
That way up, so there's,
Okay. We are ready, and I hear the energy. I was able to see you guys now. And listen, this was group one, eh?
One summer.
You were group one.
yes, we're group one.
Okay,
Your
all
mic
right,
is
so,
muted, Dr. Pearson. Dr. Pearson. Your mic is muted.
oh, it is. Hold on. No, man is
Still
muted.
muted.
No, mute. No. I think
I can hear. We are
I'm-
hearing her.
oh, you hear me? Oh,
Still
good.
muted. I'm not sure if there's like a button it is that you
It
can
it
press on
probably,
your side of the Zoom.
here's
It's
the thing.
probably you, Daniel, because we are hearing.
Okay, I know I'm supposed to be loud and clear now. All right, Daniel, you have to look at your side. Okay,
Still not
so,
hearing it though.
you still not hear me?
No,
I-
I'm actively just trying to read your lips right now to hear what you're saying.
My goodness gracious, Daniel, and guess what? I have no mute here. No, I'm not muted at all.
Daniel, check your device.
Yeah, because the rest of the class is hearing me. All right, can we just quickly jump in? Because remember, some of us want to run off here, it's 12 minutes to 10. Class ends at 10. Are you guys here? Everybody hearing me now?
Alright, so I'm just gonna summarize.
Yeah,
I guess you guys will do.
Daniel, let me say-
So hold on. Let me get it clear. Group one wants to go first.
Yes.
Awesome. Go ahead. Is that okay for the entire group? Class?
Yes.
Let's go. In a nutshell.
Alright, so in summary,
Yeah.
a city in Honduras
Mhm.
is facing grave challenge with their water supply system, especially in the peripheral low-income communities.
Yes.
So in a need to address this issue, they first of all they recognize inequity in how the water was shared, especially for those persons paying privately from a higher end or better off families. So they recognize that they needed to expand or find alternatives for this water supply. So they got a project funded by overseas companies. So they to achieve this, they need community participation. So they need the community to request the help for the construction of this water system. However, the request has to be reviewed and agreed upon by the water authority in Honduras. And then if they agree, the community now would be responsible. The community now would be responsible for building out this structure, providing the manpower, the resources, the materials, and be responsible for maintaining this water supply structure and collecting fees from its users to keep, for sustenance.
Yes.
So, in terms of the ladder of participation, my other group members will chime in.
Yes.
We are struck between 2 points on the ladder, between either partnership or placation. And we have argued She said, huh? I'm down.
No, but what's supposed to consultation?
Hold on. You mean that extreme from partnership to, don't say, alright, go on. Keep going. Kind of look a little, but anyway. So who, let me see the hands who say partnership. Let me see the hands. Let me see the hands. You might have to tell me who said placation and partnership. Was there, where are the disagreements? Who disagreed?
Is the answer partnership?
The answer is partnership, but I mean,
Thank
you
you
know.
very much. We can continue now. Or arguments for partnership.
So, arguments for partnership.
Yes.
Our argument for partnership is
Yes.
a two-way communication between the Honduras Water, National Water and Sanitary Agency and the community, right? They want to achieve a clear common goal, which is to have water access to this community. And there is a clear role for participation. So they have recognized that the community is a crucial member.
Yes.
They have given them some authority in terms of money after they've written to the water authority to get, right? So they have clear role of participation to build up the infrastructure, to get the manpower, the workforce to construct it, to purchase the materials, and to do the administrative and financial functions of this water project. We didn't think that they had a direct involvement in the decision-making process though. So that is why we were kind of torn between, because it's Honduras who actually recognized the need to expand and then got the funding from the outside, from Canada and Sweden, and now kind of like try to pass it on to the community. So we didn't see the community very active from the onset.
So the decision making felt very top down.
Right.
Not super participatory.
Yeah, but did you feel though that there was buy-in at some point and the community sharing, agreeing that this was a need of theirs, or was it there was, you see, when it comes to the placation and all of that, sometimes you'd have found more resistance and all of that too. It was this a felt need. The community felt, like, I don't know if I saw it there.
Well, we didn't really see that. They were saying that we know that it's a need, but the community didn't really say, yes, we are willing to, once they get the funding, we are willing to come on board. It didn't, and we'll be willing to pay. We can afford to pay for it. We have the staff to man it. We didn't really get that from it.
Yes.
It seemed as if the water authority was just saying, well, if they need this, you know, this is what they need to do, and they need to be enthusiastic about it when they're writing. And I'm like, if water is a essential, you know, it's a commodity. So what if they're not enthusiastic and not want to grant it? So we didn't really see the community that participatory.
Oh my goodness. All right, so listen, I'm not gonna go into all the arguments for participation, but some people take the wins or we can take it. The request had to come from the community, and I don't know if the community would have written for this water issue if they didn't feel it was part of their desire to have better water supply and all of that. And then they seem to have been involved at some point throughout the process, and therefore, I mean, in our previous class, we've all agreed that it was partnership. We've never had anybody digress, move so far, you know. But it's you made some good points about top down. It sometimes top down happens in this very conniving little thing. But then who benefits from having better water supply than the very people themselves? And sometimes part of the approach with public health practitioners and with stakeholders and external players, in the perception of a problem, sometimes from the outside you can see the problem very quickly. And then you walk in there and somebody says, we're not interested, we're not write the project, we're not interested in it, we're not write nothing, that and we want a football field. The fact that they went through the process and seem to have had the whole issue of managing the process, they were employed on the project. Those are elements of a kind of partnership. A partnership, I want to see somewhere in the language here that they approach the authorities to say we have a water problem, but this is a very short scenario. It was not spelled out, but I'm going to just assume so that we can agree that it is partnership. But I can see where it felt a little top down with the limited info that we do have here. However, I'm sure you saw other elements that show that they're involved in the process throughout. Implementation, the kind of low participation project would have been one where you get shoved down your throat. You just hear, we're going to put in some water, and you can use the water. You're not employed on the project. You're not monitoring how it is developed. You don't have nothing to do with it. You're not involved with writing for the project. The very idea of writing and requesting the project indicates a level of ownership. I see this lady over here disagreeing with me. Are you disagreeing? Can we get somebody saying amen over here a little bit? Who thought it was partnership? Was there anybody in the group?
All of us.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to move on, and then it's important to still acknowledge, the other views on this. If there is some element of top down, sometimes it is the way it is kind of still the better of a lot of other scenarios that could take place when it comes to bringing services and projects to a community. Sometimes it happens in such a horrible way. The people come and find pipes and never even know they reach there, and the amount of money that is spent, and then the people that now use the pipe, them not feel like they was a part of it. Nobody never said, yeah, you see what I'm saying? There could have been some level of major levels of resistance. We have had places where people bring pit latrine to a particular community. People say, would tell them, so we want toilet. We tell them, so we want toilet, we're no business with that. We still not true. So those things happen, but I will take I'm gonna take, thank you so much for that one. I'll take the next group.
That's group 2. Good afternoon.
Yes. Okay.
All right. So in group 2, we had a situation in urban Bangladesh in the 1975, whereby the urban era, the majority of the persons were illiterate, and they were, inappropriate disposing of human waste, as well as what seemed like prostitution. So the government sought to find a way to, they were squatting actually. The government sought to find a way to remove these squatters from the urban area and put them, in a more peripheral area. And so, so to not have a public outcry on the possibility of court hearing and all of that, the government came up with a plan to have a urban cleanup under this guise actually, to remove these squatters from the urban area. And based on the context, our group decided that the approach was manipulation. We also looked at informing. So hence one question is, can we have a mixed approach in terms of the ladder of participation? Because in this case, here is what, in this case, there was absolutely no avenue for the citizens to actually retaliate, get back at the government. And the communication was really one way. All right, the government had a newspaper that they controlled, and they wrote it. They did it in such a way that only the few literate people could actually relate to it, and in such a way under a disguise. So hence, pretty much, there was no room for any court hearing in retaliation from the citizens. And so we thought that manipulation and the possibility of just informing the citizens was really what we came up with. I don't know if that can be.
Well, so listen, this definitely is clear-cut manipulation, the idea of even the imaginary external threat and all that, that is just to say a little bit up here too, but no, shouldn't say that, but just so you
Right.
know, it is a kind of strategy that really really something else. So you are spot on with manipulation and
Informing,
I don't know if we call it informing. Informing is a little higher up on the ladder. You know, this is way down there. I would say clear cut manipulation all the way here. You know,
Okay.
yes, cunning kind of generic kind of really
Right.
intent was not exactly all that, you know. So that you are spot on with. Before we take the other group, though, I want to clap my first group here for having the insight because they have a case, you not so much, but you have made your case as manipulation.
Right.
So that's something I wanted to say. After each group, and I think right now, just acknowledge that group here. Listen, no one applause online and in the classroom. First group, give yourself a clap for that because you did make some good points to suggest. I wouldn't call it placation, but I can see where you are disagreeing a little bit with partnership there. And so you deserve a round of applause. So please do that for me. Listen, man. No, sir. No. On manipulation, please give manipulation. The group 2 their own round of applause for me now. They made a very good
Thank
case
you.
on this very
But Ms.
quickly.
Tracy, before you
Yes.
move on,
Yes.
because we also recognize that the communication was one way. So my question is, can there be more than one,
Can there-
strata approach on the ladder?
Can there be
Can
what?
we actually have manipulation and another step up on the ladder? Is that possible? In a situation, not necessarily
In a
this one.
situation like this, if you have read the literature, and there is more outside of this ladder, there is, if you look very works cited, you can get a better appreciation to justify your position. So if you got this in an essay and you were going to say, I could also, and they've asked you, remember you're going to have to look at your exam question that says, what is this case supposed to be about? And you are able to say manipulation based on these 3, 4, 5 factors. However, this also can be considered. You can make a shot of it, but this one was clearly manipulated.
Okay, right, thanks, I got you.
Yes. I'm gonna take group 3 or 4, whichever wants to come. Thank you so much. You give the round for him now. Round of applause. Let me hear group 3 now.
Daniel, that's your group?
If group 4 is ready, we can take them while group 3 is thinking about it. Let me just say something. I will say something here. Sometimes as you're reading a case, even though it might present itself with elements that look similar to another case, or similar to another level of participation, you look for some keywords. For instance, in that case with the manipulation, just the idea that this person went out of their way, a state of emergency was declared, citing an imaginary external threat. That is kind of, it is beyond, I would never even classify it as informing, period, because they're not trying to just provide information. That is a tactic. My mom is screaming in the background to hear weird sounds. She has something called night terrors that comes with dementia. Yeah, so I would just look for those salient terms. It might match something else. Some key terms to just come to your own determination as to what this case represents. All right, just some considerations here. All right, so let's go. Is group 3 ready?
Good night.
Hi, Cindy. Good night.
So group 3 had something similar to what group 2 had. with the same location of the Mirpur to the north of Dhaka, Bangladesh, and they were propose a new community for urban squatters forcibly removed. However, that project encountered serious problems in part of lack of community participation, as persons feel like the technology adopted for the project was not appropriate for Bangladesh environment, as there was no vested interest for the future inhabitants. Stakeholders were the main participators in the decision making. And in our case, we think that the residents felt manipulated. When we look at the levels of community participation, we see that there's so many different factors came out of the scenario. Like they don't think they were informed. They don't think they were consulted. They didn't see any form of partnership. In terms of the design, help design service, they didn't feel as if that there was anything inside and here. It was this group of outsiders coming in and trying to tell them what they should do or where they should go and how they should set up in terms of thing. It's like what we said is like those managers in head office come in and tell you on the floor, oh, we have a new policy, but you were never consulted and you think that it didn't make sense because they were not native to the area. So therefore, how can you come and tell us about flooding and where we should go and how we should do it? The other aspect of that showed where they had another implementation, however, cost was a factor. Even though they involve things that would benefit the community, such as like a health center and schools, they felt, well, they were a little bit more, it still didn't show persons adapting or taking to it because they were concerned about the pricing. So I think they still felt manipulated somehow because even though they brought this, how they were urban squatters, maybe their economic background was not sufficient to really afford the new proposed relocation and the maintenance of these things. So the high cost would never been accepted, and the residents themselves were scarcely concerned about this scheme. So it arrived in a very top-down manner, designed by expatriates, and the implementation was done by international NGOs and central. So the community didn't feel no sense of attachment. Maybe if they had consultations with them before and hear what they had to say, they might have had like maybe idea for a different area of relocation except for what they had proposed to them.
Dr. Pearson could just adding to what Cindy said. I don't know the case in its entirety, but it sounded like it could be informing as well.
I did say it had different levels along.
I was going to ask if I not heard her say manipulation, but I was wondering, I thought she was just still describing the case, but not going to leave it at manipulation, but informing, because it actually is it because
well, we said, even though we said it was manipulated, I did identify that along the line of community participation, that they were not informed, they were not consulted, and there was no sense of partnership of participation in it as well.
Okay. So I'm agreeing with the informing. The manipulation comes in when there is a clear line in here that suggests there was intent to mislead and to manipulate. You would have to know, point out which paragraph and speak to that in an essay to say to me that this particular area suggests it. I mean, the entire story itself is is as realistic as it gets. But we already know that decisions are made sometimes external to us as health workers. Somebody just come and just say, well, we're going to do this and that. It never work out. It never get adopted. It get thrown, resources wasted. International people are the key players. And it is sometimes, if there was a word to call it on this ladder, we would have probably had disrespectful. But no, I said disrespectful. But I believe, I think it was merely informing. It's like just, yes, it was merely informing. I wouldn't necessarily, it failed because it was just informing. And that is one of the, yes. I hear it from the wider group. Cindy, I don't know, your colleagues have something to jump in on, and you probably want to wrap up. And I wouldn't necessarily agree with a manipulation, but I would agree with that.
So just agreeing that it's informing, Doc. That's all we're doing, just agreeing.
Yeah, no problem. We're here to learn.
Thank you, Cindy. Give Cindy a clap. I want to clarify something. Not Doc, you know. Yes, I appreciate that. Speak it into being, you know, not it. So thank you so much, Cindy, for that effort. I mean, sometimes, let me tell you, communities, after projects like this happen across the globe, happening in Jamaica, same way. People just get up and write, them have some money to use up quickly, bringing out kind of people. It does not meet a need. It was never helping anybody, and people feel manipulated too. You know,
it was
so
never practical. The practical some decisions.
Precisely. So, and when we have cases like these that we share here in a public health class, it is to understand that all these, if you notice, one was bringing water, you know, it goes on and on. These are social issues that impact overall. And being at the table as a leader in your own right is important. So, and trying to find out quickly what we need to do. Knowing that at the end of the day, when projects like these fail, whether it was a water project, a pit latrine project, it is a this project, when they fail, implications and the direct health outcomes are just devastating. All right, let me go quickly to 4. Where's my group 4?
Present.
Oh, here present.
We can hear again.
All right, welcome. Let's hear it.
Should I read the scenario first?
Just a synopsis. Just in your paraphrase quickly and tell us, not the end.
All right then. So quickly, basically, this scenario had to do with the community of Celeste in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And it's a low-income neighborhood association, and it's connected to a popular movement and the Catholic Church. And this all centers around the management of a self-housing project financed by a governmental agency. Looking through it, it was largely, I want to say, an exploration in citizen power. Because we can see different parts where it is that you have 1 second. You can see different parts where it is that you have citizen control and partnership. In that it was assisted by an independent technical assistance team, which was contracted by the local government, and a supportive municipal government in Sao Paulo gave rise to several projects which were based on existing locally organized neighborhood associations, which were able to start the projects as soon as the municipal support arrived after the 1989 elections. There are also points in it with the citizen control where it is that you would have community training activities on subjects such as purchasing and negotiation, as well as construction, using simple technical language, which was initiated by the community association. And the same, I want to put it, the same support that the municipal government provided. The had significant say on issues about their projects. One area that basically we looked at and was debating between whether this was placation versus being informed was that there was regularization of land tenure, land subdivision, and infrastructure projects, which were carried out by the municipality, and the housing projects by the technical assistance team. We looked at that because we said it never really expressed that the community had reached out for this assistance or anything like that. And since the TAT was actually put in place, was contracted by the local government, this seems more like it was coming a little bit more from up top as opposed to from the level of the community.
I agree with the citizen control and otherwise empowerment, and I can tell you, because there's a win-win where sounds like the community gets what it wants and the agency external get what it wants. That kind of thing is at the heart of citizen control. So I would go with citizen control versus placation and the others. The others are way down the ladder. Remember, we're going on a continuum with the worst case scenario going down the bottom of the ladder. So based on everything that you have described and pointed to as you're writing your essay, which is due next week, you make the case for empowerment.
Excuse, we didn't hear that.
I'm just teasing little bit, man. I'm teasing. But you know, but this is how you make your case. And as I've said before, in a case that's been made, if you're making a particular case for an essay, I'm just giving a tip here. So you have strong arguments for a particular position. You can also, in a very simple sentence, to say consideration could also be given to so and so because of these particular consideration. But your salient argument is that this is a question of citizen control, although you saw elements that made you question. It's the way you make your argument. So your resounding argument is that it's empowerment, it's citizen control. It seems to be the highest level, but on you also believe you saw some elements, and you could be wrong. This is your this is how you get out of it. Make the case strongly for the first position, and also point to the idea that there are other viewpoints. Can remember, this is something that we have to get into if we're not already there, is to also have a balanced viewpoint. Sometimes some of the arguments that we make, we have, when you look through everything and you have pulled it apart in many different ways, you have strong arguments for a particular position, but then there is something there that you're questioning it, you're not embracing it. Not the placation, we're not going there, but you're just saying it could be, but thank you so very much for that. Give him a round for me now. Thank you so much. So this is where we're at. Listen, time up, at 19.
Final answer for that one.
Thank you so much for something. When I was back there, I would have done in the class, and it felt a little bit more, when you're online, kind of tricky to do, but you guys made it possible. Thank you so much. No, that is not my wrap-up, Marino. Not my wrap-up, my need for wrap-up now. So let me to just go over some pointers. Hold on 1 second. I'm not understand why this thing not working. Gerald, come quick. Yes, so the mouse not connecting to nothing. It just do its own. Yes, the mouse not working. All right, hold on. Let me see. He says, turn it around. Oh, it was me. Okay. It's working now. So let's go quickly to these are like some parting shots, because if you notice, this is so we've essentially looked through lower levels indications of participation, and we've talked about high levels of participation. The highest level in some ways sometimes is so difficult to achieve, and is impacted by time, impacted by whether you have the skill sets to do it or to facilitate it. It comes back to overarching values, how leadership sees participation. You have people who are very autocratic in nature. Community participation suggests a democratic, all views contend. We are looking at everybody's voices and trying to come to consensus building. And so what obtains will be dependent on the social environment, the political environment, and what you're working with. And so I'm never telling anybody that, oh, you have to go there and make sure citizens run this thing and them doing this and that and that. It comes down to what can work. This is the model that World Health Organization proposes for participation for us to work through. It is fleshed out in another forum, possibly with health promotion. I know Mrs. Walters can address some of these, but the model says participation happens with assessing needs and strengths. I pointed to that earlier. Agreeing on goals, objectives, pointed to that earlier. Looking for a work plan, talk to that. And these are, if you look at this model is one model for life. It is literally what we do every day as program managers, and certainly monitoring and evaluation. And that takes place along the entire strip here. What the World Health Organization says, when you're working with communities, they must be involved at every level, all 5 levels. And this is the level that they've adopted and they are embracing. And it speaks to, as I said, democracy, having all voices on board. Comes from a place of respect. It comes from a place of unconditional positive regards for people. And I will say this to some persons that are sitting at the table here. We all are part of communities. Some of us are uptown, some of us are in rural areas, some of us are in rural. And whatever is impacting, if we can understand interconnectedness between us and our neighbors and our people that we drive past or walk past or live next door, the shops that we go to, or the church up the road or whatever, all these institutions and that's all the fabric of the geographical community. Do we see the connections to health outcome? Is a healthy community dependent on access to job, employment, educational levels? Most of the research that is conducted will tell you communities with high levels of education, high employment levels tend to not have some of the social and health problems in big abundance. That doesn't mean it's absent. It just means that those social, economic and social environmental factors do bear some burden on it. And when we live in those communities as professionals, you want your voice heard. You would love to know that at the end of the day, your community is thriving and doing well, your investment in your house is going well. All of these things have to come back to the whole issue of the community being organized enough and gelling enough and working together and kind of doing things to promote health. So let's move quickly. How do we enable and facilitate ongoing engagement and dialogue? For the person who works at the community level, that is meeting with your community leaders and members, making sure there is wide representation. There's something that always happens when you go into a community. My thing is, you will meet, this is an association president, the church, the pastor up the road, the school teacher, the principal. They're the people who readily are a part of the community group itself. They tend to be them into everything. And then there is just almost like, there are people who get alienated. Young people sometimes don't have their voice, they're indifferent, they're not a part of anything. So the effort has to be made to engage with those groups. Those groups tend to get into football or get into this or that or that. But you have to find some creative ways for those persons who work directly in the community to hear from the people in the community outside just CBOs. CBOs have well-intentioned people for the most part, people who have their acts together, people who have their own agenda, people who probably don't have the interest of the community at heart. People, you have to bear those things in mind. So these are some things that's mentioned here. At the highest level, if you're not on the ground in community doing anything with the community, you're not a public health nurse, you're not a public health inspector, but you might be the MOSH, or you might be the program manager at region or whatever. You know, it's just to make sure that those groups that are working with communities, it's almost like it's a must know these people. It's a must have your finger on the pulse. Make sure you're aligned with SDC, the community policing people, those people that operate parish-wide, national-wide, regional-wide. Ensure that your plan for the year is informed by information coming out of your public, the people on the field, but certainly with all of the other stakeholders that are involved in community work. Understanding community culture is something that is important for community participation. Understanding culture speaks the language, the way people live, what is okay, what is disrespectful, what is a no-no, what time of the day the community alive, bright, up, dead, boring. So whatever interventions are being planned, they don't just in culture. If somebody says this is a Rastafarian, predominantly Rastafarians living in this geographical area with a certain kinds of thing, then that the respect and understanding, and I could go on and on. That is a whole class on its own there to talk about that kind of engagement. Important that we, in community participation, that we convey respect and equality. The old paradigm, expert, I know enough, I really don't care what you have to say. I don't really mean that statement. Sometimes people feel that way when you reach a certain level. Say, I'm not hearing nothing from nobody. Oh, you mean my plan for come down here and do the vaccines, and every time I come, everybody, you're not talking, you're not showing respect, you're not conveying to say, listen, I have your interest at heart, you have mine at heart, blah, 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 blah. It's a kind of engagement that I don't know if I can adequately show you in a presentation like this. But when we deal with the community, for the persons who work on the field and for the managers, there has to be an understanding that when, just like how you live somewhere where you reside in a particular neighborhood and you're a doctor so, you're informed, another person has come to provide services for your area and just feel like you shouldn't be listened to, feel like you shouldn't be shown any respect, don't know who you are. So we have to have this unconditional positive regard for people, period, where we don't need to know status, we don't need to know who they are, to show and convey respect. So I will never stop saying that, as if you're going to be working with a community, if you're providing services for community, if community participation is important, then you have to come from that place of everybody is equal. You might have some money today that person don't have, whatever, still human. So the humanity is important. Openness and transparency, that's something field level persons will always remember this. Don't promise what you can deliver on.
I can't, Lisa.
Yes, time up.
I sent you a private message in the chat.
Is time up? Yes. It's not, I'm not my fault. Oh my God. Oh my God. All right, let me quickly do that. Let me go quickly. And so, just some challenges, assumptions about that, we tend to think that the communities, or everybody is alike in a community, that knowledge results in behavior change. And I said some of this. I said some of this before now. And I will leave you here, just to remind us here that whether you're on the field or you are part of policy and program planning, that, you know, that there are persons who work directly with communities, tap in with them. There are some best practices, what happened with our CHA program, founded way back when, that's something to be celebrated. And I think I'm going to wrap up and mention Longwell Park as a place that had something good going on, and I'm hoping it's still sustained. And that pretty much is it. You know, that is the heart of this presentation. I thank you so much for bearing with me from across the miles, and I wish you well in this semester and going forward. All right, thank you so much. That is the end of but blessings and blessings, all right? So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
We're troopers. Oh, guys, Candace gave me the key. So if anybody wants to, when we stay over, stay back, whenever. It can be tonight.